Guys, Boxing Gossip here. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a good new year. Got a bit of a New Year's special here. This isn't going to be on a specific topic or on a specific fight. It's more going to be a general overview of some of the major topics in the sport at the minute. And as you can probably see, I'm joined by a special co-host. Regular viewers, long-term viewers will remember him. It's my good brother, my good friend and brother, and Adam Smith lookalike. It's my brother John, who has joined us. So, by popular demand, got a lot of requests to get him back on.
Did you?
Yeah, we did.
Blimey.
So, people have wanted you back on, and we've got you back on today. So, we're going to start with my favourite division in boxing. We're going to start by discussing the big guys. And I'm going to take you back to about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, where Anthony Joshua took on Eric Molina and dispatched Molina in a fairly straightforward fashion. So that's going to be the starting point. John, your take on that fight, your take on Joshua's position post his destruction of Eric Molina.
Well, as you say, it was a destruction. It was so by the numbers. It was exactly what everyone expected it to be. It was completely overshadowed by the fantastic Chisora White fight that preceded it. AJ did what he needed to do. Was it 3 rounds, off the top of my head? Knocked him out, moves on. Got the Vladimir fight. He was only fighting Molina essentially to stay warm.
Let's stick with the Molina fight. Now, Deontay Wilder took on Molina. Made pretty hard work of it. Molina went well into the second half of the fight. Landed notable shots on Wilder on numerous occasions. There was none of that against Joshua. Whilst I appreciate Molina wasn't much of an opponent, do you think that Joshua's performance against Molina in comparison to Wilder's performance is cause to be excited about Anthony Joshua?
Not really, because I don't think Molina came to win. I don't know whether he came to win against the Deontay fight, but as you say, he actually managed to do stuff. I remember him throwing, I think, 3 punches and AJ's just taking a step back with each one, and that was the extent of his offense. He looked so negative and lethargic from the moment his music came out, essentially. So it's difficult to gauge what his mindset was and where that sets him up against Deontay Wilder, because it looked like he didn't want to be there.
And with Anthony Joshua, at this stage of his career, who do you believe is the best opponent he's beaten?
I suppose it's Dillian Whyte. He's the person that's given the most trouble, who's lasted the longest. On that basis, actually, yeah, that is pretty much it. He's the one who's lasted the longest.
I think Brazil might have lasted longer than Dillian Whyte, but I might have got that wrong. But
Brazil didn't really hit him. At least Dillian hit him a couple of times in the second, and then after the bell.
Yeah, okay. So as you mentioned, after the bout, it was announced that Joshua will face Vladimir Klitschko. Initial reaction to that fight?
Would have been a better fight, obviously, than the Molina fight. Would have been preferable to actually have happened already. WBA deliberating took that away, unfortunately. If he's not going to get Deontay, which, Deontay's sort of mandatory status is a bit up in the air at the moment, and Joseph Parker doesn't seem to be making noises about wanting AJ just yet.
I think Wilder's obviously coming back from an injury. Parker's got a mandatory, which we'll be discussing in just a second. But if we look at the pure fight between Klitschko and Joshua, how excited are you for that as a pure fight?
As in the fight in itself, or in comparison to AJ's other fights?
No, as in the fight in itself.
Fairly excited. Vladimir didn't look brilliant, didn't look good at all against Tyson Fury, and he didn't look brilliant against Bryant Jennings either in his last 2. And AJ's obviously looked phenomenal against not A-star competition. So it'll be interesting to watch, if nothing else, and it's fairly exciting to see a British heavyweight in a big fight anyway.
Who do you make as a favourite?
Either way, I'm going to get shouted at in the comments section. I'd probably go with AJ.
You think AJ's the favourite?
Yeah.
And who do you think will win?
I think AJ, but I would not be surprised at all for Vladimir.
Interesting. So here's my question to you. So you just said earlier on in this video that you believe Dillian Whyte is the best person Anthony Joshua's been in with. And Dillian Whyte just went, I think it's fair to say, a very close fight with Derek Chisora. I had it a draw. Most people had Chisora ahead, obviously. You had Chisora ahead. So let's say we know that at this stage Dillian Whyte is, broadly speaking, a very similar level to Derek Chisora. Now, Chisora is obviously a good fighter, but Chisora is a guy who's lost at top level several times. My question is, Anthony Joshua's best opponent has been Dillian Whyte. And you could argue his standard of opposition has gone down since that fight. Surely the jump up to Vladimir Klitschko, surely that's...
too much?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you look at Joseph Parker, and we'll come on to Parker, but you look at Joseph Parker and you see he's fought the Cams, the Ruizes. You know, there's other guys like that out there. There's the Bryant Jenningses, the Tony Thompsons, the Bermain Staverns. Do you not think he needs a fight of that nature before jumping straight into a guy as dangerous as Vladimir Klitschko?
Well, ideally, yes. I mean, Molina was... If memory serves me correct, he wasn't meant to be fighting Molina, he was meant to be fighting Pulev, who would, I'd say, is a cut above Molina. And then he went down for Samuel Peter route for the easy knockout. And, you know, there are plenty of other people he could have fought of that level that, unfortunately, fight wasn't made. I want to see him fight Ustinov.
Yeah, but obviously those fights haven't been made. He's now going straight into Klitschko. So my question remains, given that those fights haven't been made, given that he's going from Dillian Whyte down to Brazil, down to Molina, and then straight up to Vladimir Klitschko, what about that jump in standard? That's, you know, that is, for me, if I'm talking Anthony Joshua, that's a major, major concern, that jump in standard.
It is a big jump, but I do think AJ's got the goods. Whether he has the goods to fight Vladimir, we'll see. But I do believe that AJ has the goods to be an elite level fighter who hasn't been fighting elite level fighters at the moment.
He's an elite level offensive fighter. My concern with Joshua is we've seen nothing from him defensively to suggest elite skills. We've got cause to question his punch resistance and his durability. There's the various sparring knockout rumours, David Price,
Dillian in the amateurs.
Dillian, there was the recent suggestion that he was knocked out by one of the Olympians in sparring. So there's various cause to suggest AJ is not necessarily the slickest defensive operator, not necessarily the hardest chin guy. And to me, Dillian Whyte actually hurt him more in that fight than Dillian Whyte ever hurt David Allen, for example, or Derek Chisora. So my question is, Vladimir Klitschko, love him or hate him, think he's gone or not, he's one of the elite power punchers in heavyweight history, in my opinion. This is my concern. I'm not saying Joshua can't beat Klitschko. I'm saying Joshua's been punched once or twice in his professional career. Like, that's it. He's only been operating at the Dillian Whyte level, and now he's jumping. You know, is Dillian Whyte in the top 30? Probably.
Hang on. We seem to be forgetting that everyone used to say the same thing about Vladimir. Corey Sanders, wasn't it?
Corey Sanders stopped him.
But Samuel Peter had him down 4 times.
Look, of course Joshua can beat Vladimir. Of course he can. Like, Vladimir could be gone. He could be old overnight. Joshua could outpoint him. Joshua's got home advantage. Joshua could knock him out. You know, Klitschko could go low volume. Joshua could walk him down and knock him out. But what I'm getting at is I see this as an extremely competitive fight. And I'd actually lean to Klitschko. So my point is, do you agree, due to Klitschko's size, his experience, his jab, at some point he's going to land on Anthony Joshua?
More than likely, yeah.
And I personally have huge doubt as to what Joshua's going to do when that happens. How do you think he's going to respond?
I have no idea. The last time he got hit was when Dillian Whyte wobbled him.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, Tyson Fury wobbled Klitschko, if memory serves me correct, in I think the 12th round or so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Klitschko was ever down. Clearly, Klitschko can be wobbled, but my question, we know what Klitschko is at this stage, so I'm not questioning Klitschko, because we know Klitschko's strengths and weaknesses. With Joshua, we don't know. We don't know how good he is. We don't know his flaws. So I think there's more cause to discuss Joshua, because Klitschko is such a proven commodity.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how we actually relax.
We will have to wait and see, yeah. But of course, the purpose of this channel is to...
Well, this question won't go away until it happens, will it? Because even if he knocks Klitschko out with the first jab,
yeah,
and goes into the fight with Deontay Wilder, the same question will be there. So it's going to be a matter of wait till he actually gets punched.
Yeah. And your prediction is Klitschko will lose?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's move it on. Joseph Parker won a world title against Andy Ruiz. First and foremost, how did you score the fight?
Parker just wasn't blown away. It's interesting. He shows off the devastating power of a young monster heavyweight. Did he knock out Takam? I don't remember him knocking out Takam. No, he didn't knock out Takam. And he did knock out Ruiz Jr. Ruiz Jr. showed up doing more than I thought he was going to. I thought Parker would win. Fairly comprehensively. I had it in my mind leading up to be like a 117 sort of scoreline. So I was proven wrong in that regard. I will say that.
Talk me through your view of Parker, strengths and weaknesses.
I think, when I first started seeing him, he had the typical heavyweight prospect sort of build-up, didn't he? He was flooring people, he was annihilating people, looked to have lightning-fast hands. Obviously, you've been plugging him for a few years now at this point as well. So he looked like he had the goods as a young talent, but I suppose this is the thing with all young talents, at some point they look like they've got the goods. And I'm not saying he hasn't, but in his sort of step-up fights, Ruiz and Takam, the impressiveness has not been there as much. Yes, beating Takam and Ruiz is good, but it's the lightning-fast knockout with blistering hand speed doesn't seem to be there as much.
Talk me through his weaknesses.
Well, it's difficult. He hasn't been chinned properly, so that is sort of unknown commodity.
He appears to have a good chin, yeah.
Excuse me. His weaknesses. I don't know, because as I said, the quality seems to have dropped off somewhat in his last two fights. Cam is a known spoiler.
Yeah, I think that's as he stepped up in grade. To be honest, I'm not sure that his quality has dropped. I think there are big weaknesses in Parker's game. I think he's a fighter who needs to fight in one particular fashion, and if someone brings the heat, puts the pressure on him, doesn't allow him to dictate the pace, I think he's far less comfortable, and I think that's something that's going to happen more and more and more as you fight a better level of opponent. And I think that is what's gone on so far in his career to date, and will possibly continue to happen.
I'd be interested if he goes down the Hughie Fury route, because
Hughie is the mandatory.
Yes, with if he were to fight in a similar style to the way Tyson fought against Vladimir, a very spoiler, fight tall, fight big, fight from behind, a jab, etc. It'd be interesting to see how Ruiz would deal with that. Because he is usually
how Parker would do it.
Sorry, quite right, yes, because Parker does like to fight like a bull.
I'm not sure he does like to fight like a bull at all. I think Parker's a guy who likes to fight from range and throw clean combinations.
Do you?
Very much so.
Oh, fair enough. I'll bow to your superior knowledge.
How do you see that Hughie versus Parker fight going?
It depends, because I think I have my reservations about Hughie Fury. We may say that it's a big step up it might be a big step up for Parker to have fought Ruiz, but it would be an enormous step up for Hughie to go in against Parker.
It will be, yeah.
Off the back of that Fred Kasai fight.
Fred Kasai?
Kasai, quite right.
Yeah,
sorry.
But Hughie's, Parker's obviously a higher level than anyone Hughie's fought for. That Rudenko win is a good win. That's a very good win. Sure. Rudenko gave Brown hell. Rudenko had another decent win the other day. Whereas Hughie, really, really pretty much won every round in that fight. Who would you choose then if that fight were to be made?
What, between Parker and Hughie?
Yeah.
I'd probably start with... going on sort of reputation and recent performances, I'd go on Parker, and then we'd see how Hughie adapts, or Parker adapts to Hughie. Actually, would be the best way to say it, I think.
Interesting. So far we are completely opposed. I think Hughie will beat Parker with a bit in hand, and I think Klitschko will probably knock out Anthony Joshua.
Knock him out.
I think so. Whereas My logic for that is just that I don't think Joshua will know what to do and be able to live with the power.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that he will be completely outgunned in that department.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a huge step up for Klitschko, for Hughie Fury. Klitschko, he's been very inactive. He's had injuries. He's in the autumn of his career. He could have got Oliver Knight. So these are not predictions that I'd absolutely take to the bank. But these are predictions that I'm, relatively behind. Let's talk about Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury has said in a recent tweet, and it was confirmed by Peter Fury, that he intends to make a return in 2017.
April, wasn't it?
April or May. In your opinion, is Tyson Fury definitely the number one man in the division if he returns?
No.
Tell me more.
Well, he was the number one in the division. He won the lineal title essentially by beating the man. He beat Vladimir. And he, in many ways, what he said is right, that people have got these, there's suddenly multiple champions because he broke up the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
But in doing that, he has allowed people to challenge for it. Now, I don't think Deontay Wilder could be the man in this division because of the quality of his opponents. Especially with his latest fight announcement, which I'm sure we'll come to later.
Yeah, so just going back to the question in hand, if Tyson Fury isn't the man, who is?
I think it'll be the winner of Vladimir, Joshua.
But that's illogical. If Vladimir goes and chins Joshua, and Tyson Fury's in the division, surely Tyson Fury's the man.
It depends on how you rank Vladimir coming back after 2 years of inactivity.
Yeah, well, if Vladimir goes and chins Joshua, then surely the form is that Tyson Fury beat Vladimir.
Well, if Vladimir wins against Joshua, or if Joshua wins against Vladimir for that matter, they will hold 2 of the major belts. Parker is relatively unknown at this point. Yes, he's the WBO, but we'll see where he goes with that. Deontay needs to step up.
Yeah, my question is, how do you possibly pick the Klitschko-Joshua winner as the number one over Tyson Fury?
Because if Joshua wins, then it's 18 unbeaten, 18 potential knockouts, unified champion. Yeah. If Vladimir wins, then he is the unified champion, would return to his position amongst the 4 heavyweight champs, or the 3 heavyweight champs in that case, as the best champion.
Why?
Because I would personally say if he beats Joshua, that would make him better than Deontay and Parker.
But you'd have to rank Fury above Klitschko based on the fact that Fury beat Klitschko.
Not really, not at all. Beating someone doesn't necessarily make someone better. No, I don't. Mickey Ward beat Arturo Gatti. Did people think that Ward was better?
But I mean, are you seriously suggesting you would think Klitschko is better than Tyson Fury?
I think they're pretty similar.
I'm speechless. I mean, if Joshua goes and beats Klitschko and knocks him out, you could make an argument that Joshua's form is stronger than Vladimir's. But, I mean, it's completely illogical what you're saying.
No, well, let's consider the Vladimir-Tyson fight. It was dull.
It was a crap fight.
It was a crap fight.
That's not relevant.
And Tyson did what needed to be done, but neither of them showed a certain amount of skill in that fight. The only skill was Tyson playing interference.
Tyson's back foot boxing game, the way he was able to move, the way he was able to feint, was when you're talking true boxing skill, you're not talking who hits the hardest.
No, I understand that. I don't think Vladimir showed up for that fight. I think Tyson boxed beautifully against a Vladimir that was not doing what Vladimir could do. Agreed?
Who would you pick as a comeback? We'll have to leave this topic because you're wrong. Who would you pick as a comeback opponent for the Furious one?
Depends. Wasn't it said Deontay's the route he wants to take?
No.
No, I seem to remember.
Well, they've discussed every route, but
it depends. I don't know because there's plenty of heavyweights making noise at the moment. Any of them would be a good opponent. Depends on what level he wants to come back at. You know, there's
Who would you like to see him in with as a realistic comeback fight?
Well, there's lots of people ruling out a heavyweight title fight on his return.
Yeah.
There's lots of people I'd like to see him fight. I'd like to see him fight Ustinov. I'd like to see him fight Luis Ortiz. I'd like to see him fight. Who's it? other name's escaped me now. I can't remember it. Jarrell Miller. I'd like to see him fight. I wouldn't mind fighting Shannon Briggs just so I could watch the pre-fight build-up. The David Haye fight will never happen, by the sounds of things. But there's plenty of people I'd like to see him fight.
And Tyson Fury, we know, is blown up to a pretty outrageous weight outside the ring. We know he's had problems with his drinking and potentially something a bit stronger than that. He himself has admitted to taking cocaine. We know he hasn't been living the Spartan lifestyle. Do you think he can come back to boxing despite that lifestyle? I mean, he's a relatively young man still. Do you think he can come back to boxing and kick off where he left off? Pick up straight away. Do you think he can come back and beat a Parker and beat a Joshua? Or do you think that lifestyle is going to take its toll?
I think it does take its toll almost immediately. It depends on how rigorous the training is. I mean, you'd have to be really brutal in training when you blow him up to that size.
Well, he's been back in training in December and the return date's May.
Yeah, there's a difference between doing just cardio and then doing your weights, doing your sparring, doing your bag work and doing your cardio. He is big now. We've seen the photos. He is big. And he has to lose that before we can even start thinking about throwing punches. I seem to remember saying 2, 3, 4 fights before a title fight. That seems to be the most logical way to do it. But you need to be quite hard on him in training, I think, to get the maximum out of him.
David Haye versus Tony Bellew. Discuss.
David Haye, very quick knockout.
Would you be surprised if it was a one-round job?
No, not overly. I don't really think it'll get past 4.
A guy who gets dropped by Oval McKenzie at 175, a guy who gets dropped by Adonis Stevenson and knocked out by Adonis Stevenson. Let's be honest, Adonis Stevenson's a pretty small, light heavyweight, although very hard punching. Can a guy like that, obviously he may have been weight drained, but can a guy who's getting stopped by those sort of punches go the distance against a guy like David Haye?
I don't think he's fast enough. I don't think he's refined enough. I don't think he's got the chin.
Does he have any advantage over David Haye?
Size, I suppose. As in, let me quantify that. David Haye comes in chiselled, doesn't he? He comes in incredible shape.
Yeah.
Tony Bellew doesn't. So, I mean, he comes in, he'll probably be less refined. Defined, quite right. But he might have more on him in many ways.
Surely he'll be lighter than David Haye.
I don't know. You take a weight restriction off a man, and then maybe he'll just work out.
I think that's a massive disadvantage for Bellew, to be honest.
No. I don't think it will help him in any way, shape, or form. I think if you were to line up sort of tailor to tape style.
I imagine that Tony Bellew will come in at about 205, 206.
Do you think?
David Haye will come in the 220s. I think David Haye will have a substantial size advantage. I think he'll have a huge speed advantage.
Yes.
I think he'll have a huge power advantage. A technique advantage. And Tony Bellew's never been able to block a jab. He's very, very poor when a fighter establishes their jab against him. David Haye under Mr. McGuigan's been getting that jab pumping. I agree with you, despite a pretty outrageous comment about size. I agree with you there. Deontay Wilder, you mentioned his next opponent, whose surname I'm going to murder now. Warwick or something similar to that?
I won't try.
The guy was stopped by Povetkin in a few rounds. I'm not 1,000,000%. I've seen him fight. I've seen him fight twice actually. I can't really remember watching him fight. I remember thinking that he was okay, but had nothing to suggest elite level capability. Deontay Wilder's another guy whose level of opposition actually appears to be decreasing. What's your take on him?
I think, well, for this fight you have to quantify the fact obviously he's come with quite big surgery to his hand and his elbow, I think.
Definitely hand, possibly, yeah.
And you immediately, I think, like, it's fair enough. You don't go straight into a big title unification, let's say, when you're not sure as to the strength of your own hand as a boxer. So fair enough. In many ways, his fighting, his opposition, I'm pretty sure I'm saying most of his opponents are top 15 ranked WBC.
Yeah, they will be.
Yeah, so he he's sort of strafing for WBC rankings in many ways. And obviously his mandatory is so up in the air at this point, no one really knows what that's going to be. So I suppose you could say he's doing nothing wrong. He's been strafing the opposition. When he fought Molina and Dupar, it was sort of homecoming fights. The Povetkin fight would have been his biggest fight by a country mile. Obviously didn't happen. Whether he goes in against Bermain Stiverne now or something else, we'll see. So, but he's been fighting ranked opponents, just not overly impressive ranked.
But they're ranked by the WBC. They're not. These aren't the top guys.
No.
I mean, yeah. Is it fair to say that out of the heavyweight champions, the one with the biggest win is Parker?
Name quality, yeah, I'd say so.
It's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wilder's second best win, if we're honest, and it's bizarre to say this, but if you actually look at his resume and work out what his second best win is, it's probably Malik Scott.
Bermain is the number one.
Yeah.
Malik Scott. Yeah, well, it depends where you put Malik Scott, Dupar, and Molina.
You'd have to have Malik Scott above Molina. Dupar, I mean, yeah, I guess you could have an argument, but it's not overly impressive stuff.
No.
Luis Ortiz.
Yes.
I thought he looked very poor in his last two fights.
Yes.
Has age caught up with him?
Looks like it. He looked. I was actually watching the King Kong Ortiz versus Bryant Jennings fight quite recently, and that started quite fast paced and kept up, and Ortiz's beautiful boxing skills showing through. The Malik Scott fight, obviously Malik didn't really fight. Yeah, fair enough in that. But the Dave Ryan fight was Dave Allen, sorry, was really poor. I thought it looked really lethargic. There was no sense of urgency. It was a fight he was almost certainly going to win, but there was no attempt really to. And Dave Allen didn't really do much in the fight either. So it was difficult to have a barn burner. But
who would you like to see Luis Ortiz paired up against?
I wouldn't really mind, really, as long as we could get a competitive fight going or an interesting fight. There's people out there. Whether he goes into a sort of WBA, no one knows what's happening with the WBA titles these days either. But there's Ustinov, there's Miller. It depends on whether people want to pony up the money to put him in. I'd love
to ask. Are you the world's biggest Alexander Ustinov fan?
No, it's just it goes without saying that Alexander Ustinov is a top-ranked fighter.
Who by?
The WBA.
Oh, by the WBA, yeah.
Yeah, well, but he never got to fight with Fury.
Yeah.
He's been just sort of bounced around the top 3 or 4 of the WBA, but he's never fought anyone in this mini tournament style. He didn't fight Lucas Brown. He hasn't fought Fraser Quendo. He hasn't fought King Kong Ortiz. So he's been bouncing around though without actually having a good. He hasn't fought Pulev. He's been bouncing around without a fight, essentially. That's why I keep name dropping him, essentially, because he could have a fight.
What about Dillian White?
What versus Luis Ortiz?
How do you see that one going if that were to be made?
Right. On paper, I'd side with Luis Ortiz in that fight.
Where do you rate Dillian White just in general?
In general, well, he's. I don't know. I would prefer to ask that question after his next fight, whoever that may be.
You're very elusive today.
His fight with Derek Chisora was good, but I gave it to Chisora, as has already been stated. I suspect they'll say, given the fallout of the Bermain Stiverne Povetkin fight, that he has to fight Stiverne.
So the year today, end of 2017, who do you think is the number 1 heavyweight in the world?
Ruling out Tyson Fury having a title fight this year.
No. Who do you think will be the number 1 heavyweight in the world by the end of 2017?
I don't know then. If you're going to say...
Well, of course you don't know, it's a prediction.
No, but if we're not ruling that out, then it could be Tyson Fury, couldn't it?
It could be Tyson Fury.
But then it could equally be the winner of Joshua Klitschko.
Yeah, I know. But out of those options, who do you think will be the number 1 by the end of 2017?
It depends on whether Fury gets a title shot. This is why I said rule it out or not. Because if you rule it out, then it won't be him, obviously. But if he does, then it throws it all open.
Let's say he does.
He does get a title shot. Who do you think he has a title shot against?
Parker.
Okay, against Parker, then I think it would be a much tighter thing. If you said if he fought and beat Deontay, it would be him. Against Parker, it would be more tricky for me to say, really.
I know he's not going to fight Parker. I'm just trying to make Mr. Fence-sitter over here come up with an opinion. I'll say it's a real tough division at present. Cause controversy, but don't be completely amazed if by the end of 2017 the #1 heavyweight in the world is David Haye.
You think?
I think it's very possible. I think David Haye will destroy Tony Bellew.
Agreed. Isn't he the mandatory for Parker?
He's lost that position based on
The
that.
belly fight.
I think if David Haye goes and destroys destroys Tony Bellew, there is a decent chance that the demand for Haye versus the winner of Klitschko Joshua will just be so high. And I, at this point, would pick David Haye over both Klitschko and Joshua. So don't be amazed if it's David Haye. But clearly David Haye's a tricky character. He's a guy who, doesn't fight regularly, and when he does fight, it's against questionable opposition. So I'm not saying it's going to be David Haye, but I don't rule him out. Funnily enough, Povetkin has got the #1 resume in boxing at the minute.
A couple of asterisks here and there.
Yeah, but I mean, you just can't rate him, really, in my opinion. Deontay Wilder, I just don't think he's going to get the fights. #1, I don't think he's inclined to make the big fights. #2, the Povetkin fight's gone. And I know people talk about Fury versus Wilder, Joshua versus Wilder. Why would Joshua go and fight Wilder? I know Hearn talks about it, but I just don't see it. The money in fighting a David Haye or a Tyson Fury is so much larger due to that domestic interest. And Wilder's a big risk. So I'm not sure Wilder will get the defining fights.
I don't think Haye will get the Joshua fight.
I'm not sure Parker will cope with the top 5 step up for opposition. The thing with David Haye, though, is if David Haye chins Bellew, which we both say we expect him to, and I'm not sure he'll get the Joshua fight either. I think Hearn will be very, very nervous. I mean, it will be the second time that Haye destroys one of Hearn's guys if he does that. And will he want to risk the golden goose? But the public demand is going to be so high. I almost think it will look like a duck if they don't make the fight.
Maybe. And in theory, you're right. But say we enter negotiations, David Haye's got a good name value in and of himself. It'll be one of the first times where AJ Klitschko is going to be essentially the first time where AJ goes in, and there might be 2 A sides to that fight, as it were. If AJ beats Klitschko and then fights David Haye, it's 2 A stars. That's going to be a hell of a lot of money, and David Haye doesn't need to negotiate really on that front because his name is worth a huge amount in and of itself. And it'll be so easy to then go, his demands are unrealistic, a fight over.
Yeah, I mean, whether Hearn will want the fight is the big question. But I think they're going to have to up the level of opponent for Joshua at some point, which obviously they are doing for Klitschko.
Yeah.
I think Eddie Hearn said today in an interview that the pay-per-view figures for Molina were very, very, very strong.
Really?
Very strong. Potentially stronger than Joshua White. So that's kind of showing that they don't need to make the mega fights to do good numbers. But as Hearn also pointed out, when Joshua Klitschko happens, there'll be so much money involved. Will Joshua be motivated to take the smaller fights after that? To be fair, if you knock out Vladimir Klitschko, it's hard to go back to fighting Eric Molinas of this world.
It'll be very hard to go back to not fighting at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, because there are so many Wembley Stadium fights out there. I mean, Wilder's a stadium fight.
Haye is.
Fury. Tyson Fury is. I think Hughie Fury could be if he beats Joseph Parker. I don't know if Joseph Parker is a stadium fight, but
if he beats Hughie Fury,
it is. I still think there'll be a Dillian White rematch.
Yeah.
I still think that's the reason why Eddie Hearn signed Dillian White, and I think that's the end goal.
Yeah.
Don't rule out David Price. David Price, there's going to be some fights announced involving him. If he gets 1 or 2 wins on the belt, don't rule out a big pay-per-view, David Price. People bought that Molina pay-per-view in spades, so don't be amazed if people buy a David Price pay-per-view. Anyway, we're going to cut it there for a quick pause. We discussed the heavyweight division to death there. We're going to come back in just a second and do a part 2 video where we're going to discuss some of the other divisions. So thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed this, do hit the thumbs up button. I'd certainly appreciate that. Subscribe to the Boxing Gossip channel. My links to my social media are in the description below, so you can add me as a friend on Facebook, or you can follow me on Twitter at Boxing Gossip. Leave your comments below. Feel free to tear into his good self. Yeah, as I say, hit the thumbs up. Cheers, guys.